Okay, friendly little reminder with proportions. When we solve proportions, we cross multiply. All right, so for instance, if I give you x over 4 equals 2 over, I don't know, 8, you would cross multiply. So you'd say 4 times 2 equals 8 times x. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times x is 8x. And then we just solve. So the opposite of multiplication is dividing. So x equals 1. So that's what we're going to be doing, but we're going to be doing with word problems. Okay. All right, example number 1. 20 ounces at $7. What is 17 ounces at X, oops, not, at X dollars? So the first thing you need to do is set up your rule or your formula, whatever you want to call it. I'm always going to say, what's your rule? So your rule is, and I decide what am I talking about? So I'm talking about ounces and money. So I just put it in order. So my rule is going to be ounces over money. Okay? So you're going to have a proportion, which means two ratios that are equal to each other, two fractions that are equal to each other. So we have 20 ounces. Ounces are on top for every $7. Dollars are on the bottom. Now I go to my next piece of information. 17 ounces. 17 ounces is on the top for how many dollars? I don't know. Now I cross multiply. 7 times 17, I'm honestly not for sure. I grab my calculator. All right, so 7 times 17 is 119. And 20 times x is 20x. So then I divide both sides by 20, giving me x equals 5.95. But now I have to go back and I have to remember, what is x? X is dollars. So really, it's $5.95. Okay, next one. Example 2. All right. 2 centimeters represents 3.5 kilometers. What is 2.4 kilometers in centimeters? Okay, so we go ahead and we write our rule. So our rule is centimeters over kilometers, because that's what we're talking about. So we would say, okay, centimeters over kilometers. Now I go ahead and write my proportion. So 2 centimeters, centimeters on top, for every 3.5 kilometers, right? This is what I'm looking. 3.5 kilometers, 2.5 centimeters. All right, the next thing they ask me is they give me 2.4 kilometers. So 2.4 kilometers. Kilometers is on the bottom. So I have to write 2.4 down here. And then we don't know how many centimeters, so that's where our proportion, our x, our variable is. Now we cross multiply. 3.5 times x is 3.5x. 2 times 2.4 is 4.8. And then I divide both sides by 3.5. And x gives me 4.8 divided by 3.5. 1.3, and I'm just going to round it to 7. So once again, I have to go back and say, okay, what am I looking for? I'm looking for centimeters. So I would say 1.37 centimeters. Okay, now we like to think that it's always nice and pretty, but they could seriously ask you about anything. So let's just do a fun one. Okay, so for every 12 butterflies. There are 4 unicorns. How many unicorns for 18 butterflies? Okay, so identify what we're talking about. So if I go through, I'm just going to grab my highlighter. So butterflies, and then I look over here, butterflies. And then I'm also talking about unicorns. Okay, so my rule would be butterflies over unicorns. Okay, my first piece of information for my first sentence was 12 butterflies, butterflies on top, for every 4 unicorns, unicorns on the bottom. My next sentence, how many unicorns? We don't know. Unicorns is on the bottom, so that's the unknown. For 18 butterflies. Butterflies is on the top. Now I can solve the proportion. 4 times 18 is 72. 12 times x is 12x. Divide both sides by 12 to give me x equals 6. Remember, it's not just x equals 6. We're seeing, well, okay, what did they actually ask us for? They were asking for unicorns. So we would say 6 unicorns. The last way that they could ask you is using a scale. So they could say, oh, sorry, not from. Okay, on a map, 1 centimeter represents 120 miles. What is the actual distance between Norfolk and Virginia Beach if it is, well, this isn't a really, let's say Richmond over here. Richmond and Virginia Beach. If you already write Norfolk, don't erase it. It doesn't really matter. I'm just thinking like logistically. Okay, and VB, it is 3 centimeter. Let's actually, let's do, sorry, I'm like having trouble with this problem. 2.7 centimeters. Okay. Let's read that again just to make sure it makes sense. On a map, 1 centimeter represents 120 miles. What is the actual distance between Richmond and Virginia Beach if it is 2.7 centimeters away on the map? All right, so our rule, you can take the rule directly from the scale. Okay, so we're dealing with centimeters and miles. So centimeters over miles. So our first ratio, our first fraction is already set up for us, 1 over 120, right? Centimeters on top, miles on the bottom. And then over here it tells us 2.7 centimeters. So centimeters is on top, so miles is our unknown. And we cross multiply. 1 times x is 1x, or just x. And 120 times 2.7 is 324. And then once again, we're talking about miles. So 324 miles. I think that's probably still too far, but maybe not. I don't know. Virginia Beach to Richmond, maybe. All right, here are your practice problems. All right. So 5 liters for $15.25. How many liters for $33.55? 3 packages of cheese. Yummy. For $7.17. How much for 6 packages? All right. 20 centimeters for every 18 meters on a map. How many meters is 15 centimeters? And last one. 2 gallons of water weighs 8.5 pounds. If it weighs 19 pounds, how many gallons? All right, there's your practice problems.